Listen closely, my friends. There is a strange kind of pain that leaves no bruise, no scar, and no evidence anyone else can see. It arrives quietly, hidden inside ordinary conversations, ordinary friendships, and ordinary relationships. One day you simply notice that you no longer feel like yourself. You second-guess your thoughts, question your instincts, and carry a heaviness you cannot fully explain. The most unsettling part is that you cannot point to the exact moment it began. Marcus Aurelius spent much of his life surrounded by people who smiled in public while hiding different intentions in private. He understood something that most people only learn after years of confusion. Truly dangerous people rarely reveal themselves through obvious cruelty. They do not arrive as enemies. They arrive as trusted friends, loyal partners, respected mentors, and sometimes even the people you love the most. Their greatest weapon is not force, it is disguise. The Stoics believed that every human being possesses an inner fortress, a place where judgment, reason, and self-respect live. It is the part of you that decides what is true, what deserves your attention, and what kind of life you will build. But there are people who spend years learning how to quietly weaken that fortress. They do not break down the walls in a single attack. They remove one stone at a time until you no longer recognize the person standing in the mirror. What makes these people so dangerous is not what they do to your life. It is what they do to your mind. They make you doubt what you saw, question what you felt, and apologize for wounds you never created. Slowly, almost invisibly, they turn your own judgment against you. By the time most people realize what has happened, they have already spent years fighting battles they were never supposed to fight. Tonight, we are going to uncover 7 signs of a truly dangerous person through the lens of Stoic wisdom. Some of these signs are subtle, some are uncomfortable, and one of them is so deceptive that countless people mistake it for love, loyalty, or concern. If a certain face enters your mind while listening, do not ignore it. Sometimes the truth arrives as a whisper, long before it arrives as certainty. And the sooner you learn to recognize these patterns, the sooner you stop giving away your peace to people who never deserved it. Sign 1. They slowly teach you not to trust your own mind. The first sign is not anger. It is not cruelty. It is not even dishonesty. The first sign is far more dangerous because it attacks the one thing every Stoic believed must remain protected above all else: your judgment. Epictetus taught that a person can lose wealth, status, reputation, and even freedom, yet still remain whole if they preserve the ability to see reality clearly. A dangerous person understands the opposite. They understand that if they can make you doubt your own perception, they no longer need to control you directly. You will begin doing their work for them. It rarely starts with something dramatic. It begins with small moments that seem too insignificant to question. You remember a conversation one way, and they remember it another. You bring up something they said, and they smile as if the memory belongs to someone else entirely. At first, you assume it is a misunderstanding. After all, everyone forgets things. Everyone remembers details differently. But then it happens again, and again, and again. Slowly, a strange habit begins to form inside you. Before speaking, you start reviewing your own thoughts as if they need permission to exist. Marcus Aurelius warned himself constantly about the danger of surrendering his judgment to other people. He knew that confusion is one of the oldest forms of control. Because once a person no longer trusts their own eyes, they begin searching for someone else's version of reality to stand on. That is the moment the balance of power shifts. Not when you lose an argument, not when someone raises their voice. The moment you stop believing your own experience. Notice how exhausting these conversations become. No matter how clearly you explain yourself, you leave feeling drained rather than understood. The discussion circles endlessly. The subject changes. Old mistakes are brought back from years ago. Questions become accusations. Before long, you cannot even remember what the original issue was, and while you are busy defending your perception, they are quietly teaching you that every concern you raise must first survive their approval. The Stoics would tell you something most people do not want to hear. The solution is not a better argument. It is not gathering more evidence. It is not finding the perfect words that will finally make them understand. A person committed to distorting reality is not looking for truth. They are looking for exhaustion. They want you tired enough to abandon your own certainty and accept theirs instead. This is why many Stoics kept journals. Not because they wanted to record events, but because they wanted a place where reality could not be negotiated. A written memory cannot be interrupted. It cannot be talked over. It cannot be persuaded to change its story. The moment you begin trusting your own observations again, the spell starts to weaken. The fog begins to lift. And for the first time in a long time, you start hearing a voice that had been buried beneath all the noise. That voice is your own, and a truly dangerous person fears nothing more than the day you start listening to it again. But if making you doubt yourself is the first move, the second move is even more destructive, because it allows them to hurt you and somehow convince you that they are the victim. Sign 2. They turn your pain into evidence against you. There is a moment that reveals more about a person's character than years of kindness ever can. It is the moment after they hurt someone, not when they are praised, not when they are comfortable, not when life is going their way. The moment after they have caused pain, because that is where conscience reveals itself. A person with a healthy conscience looks inward. A dangerous person looks outward. One asks, "What have I done?" The other asks, "How do I escape responsibility for what I have done?" At first, the pattern is difficult to see because it disguises itself as vulnerability. They cross a boundary, break a promise, disrespect you, or say something that leaves a wound. When you finally gather the courage to speak about it, something unexpected happens. The conversation stops being about the pain you experienced and starts becoming about their feelings. Suddenly they are misunderstood. Suddenly they are the one suffering. Suddenly their discomfort becomes more important than the damage that created it. The ancient Stoics understood that one of the greatest obstacles to wisdom is the refusal to examine oneself honestly. Seneca wrote that most people would rather invent excuses than face their own faults, because excuses protect the ego, while truth demands change. A dangerous person becomes a master of this avoidance. They do not deny the wound completely. That would be too obvious. Instead, they redirect attention away from it. They make the spotlight follow your reaction rather than their behavior. You will notice a strange reversal begin to happen. You enter the conversation carrying hurt, but somehow you leave carrying guilt. You came looking for understanding, yet you end up apologizing. Not because you were wrong, but because they have convinced you that your response to the injury is more offensive than the injury itself. The wound becomes invisible, while your reaction becomes the crime. This is one of the oldest psychological tricks in human history, and it succeeds because good-hearted people naturally care about the feelings of others. Marcus Aurelius believed that every person should be held accountable first by their actions, and only second by their words. This sounds simple, yet most people do the opposite. They become hypnotized by explanations, emotional speeches, tears, and promises. They forget to ask the only question that matters: what actually happened? A person can cry and still avoid responsibility. A person can sound sincere and still be manipulating the truth. Emotion is not proof of innocence. Sometimes it is simply a shield protecting someone from the consequences of their choices. Watch carefully when accountability enters the room. A person with integrity may feel shame, but they remain present. They do not run from the discomfort. They do not demand that you rescue them from it. They understand that guilt is part of growth. But a dangerous person experiences accountability as a threat. They cannot sit with it. They must redirect it. They must escape it. And if escape is impossible, they will try to transfer it onto someone else. This is why certain phrases appear again and again. You're too sensitive. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. After everything I've done for you, this is what you're focused on. Listen carefully to these words. None of them address the harm. None of them examine the behavior. Their only purpose is to make you question whether you had the right to feel hurt in the first place. The real goal is not to solve the problem. The goal is to make you abandon it. The Stoics would tell you that true strength is not found in winning these arguments. It is found in refusing to carry responsibilities that do not belong to you. Someone else's discomfort at being confronted is not your burden to manage. Someone else's guilt is not your punishment to carry. The moment you understand this, something inside you changes. You stop rushing to comfort people who created the very pain being discussed. You stop confusing emotional performances with accountability. And for the first time, you begin seeing the difference between remorse and self-preservation. Because a person who truly regrets hurting you wants to repair the damage. A person who only regrets being confronted wants to escape the consequences. And that difference can change the entire course of your life. But there is a third sign that is even more deceptive. It appears as generosity, kindness, loyalty, and support. In fact, many people mistake it for love. Only years later do they discover that every gift came with a hidden price attached. Sign 3. Their kindness always comes with a future debt. Some of the most dangerous people you will ever meet are not cruel. They are generous. They remember your birthday. They check on you when nobody else does. They help you when you are struggling. They say exactly the words you needed to hear at exactly the moment you needed to hear them. In the beginning, they feel like an answer to a prayer you never spoke out loud. And that is precisely why this sign is so difficult to recognize. Because nobody expects manipulation to arrive carrying gifts. The Stoics drew a sharp distinction between generosity and transaction. A truly virtuous person gives because giving is part of their character. The act is complete the moment it is given. Nothing more is expected. No hidden contract, no future payment, no emotional invoice waiting quietly in the background. But a dangerous person understands something most people do not. The fastest way to gain influence over someone is not through force, it is through indebtedness. At first, the debt is invisible. You think they are helping because they care. You think they are sacrificing because they love you. You think they are supporting you because they believe in you. Then one day, usually when you establish a boundary, something changes. The kindness you once admired suddenly reappears as evidence in a trial you never agreed to attend. Every favor is remembered. Every sacrifice is recounted. Every gift is brought back from the dead and placed before you like a bill that has finally come due. And in that moment, you realize something disturbing. Nothing was forgotten. Nothing was free. Everything was being recorded. Seneca warned about people who use generosity as a tool for control rather than an expression of virtue. Such people do not give because they value you. They give because giving creates leverage. They understand a psychological truth that has existed for thousands of years. Most decent people feel uncomfortable owing something to someone else. A manipulative person turns that discomfort into a weapon. Watch what happens the first time you disappoint them. Not betray them, not harm them, simply disappoint them. Perhaps you say no to a request. Perhaps you choose your own needs for once. Perhaps you refuse to sacrifice your peace to protect their expectations. Suddenly the warmth disappears, the patience disappears, the understanding disappears. The mask slips for a moment, and beneath it you discover something unexpected: possession. Because what looked like generosity was often ownership in disguise. Marcus Aurelius believed that freedom was one of the highest forms of human dignity. A person who genuinely cares about you wants you to remain free, even when your choices inconvenience them. They may not always agree with you. They may not always like your decisions, but they do not punish you for making them. A dangerous person is different. They become uncomfortable the moment your independence interferes with their influence. This is why boundaries reveal character faster than affection ever will. Anyone can be loving when they are getting what they want. Anyone can be patient when they are in control. Anyone can appear generous while their investment is producing returns. The real test begins the moment you stop being useful, the moment you stop being available, the moment you stop being easy to control. That is when the hidden contract reveals itself. And perhaps the most heartbreaking part is not discovering that someone wanted something from you. Every relationship involves needs. The heartbreaking part is discovering that what you believed was unconditional care was actually conditional compliance, that your value was tied to how accessible you were, how agreeable you were, how willing you were to continue paying a debt you never knowingly accepted. The Stoics would tell you to pay attention to one simple question: does this person's kindness make me feel free, or does it make me feel obligated? Because genuine love expands your freedom. Manipulation shrinks it. One feels like sunlight, the other feels like a leash. And the most dangerous people become very uncomfortable the moment they realize that leash is slipping from their hands. But there is a fourth sign that goes even deeper than this. Because once a person realizes they cannot fully control you, they often begin targeting the people around you. Not through direct attacks, through something far more subtle. They start making sure the only voice you trust is theirs. Sign 4. They slowly become the only voice you trust. The most dangerous prison is not built with walls. It is built with influence. That is why truly manipulative people rarely begin by attacking your freedom directly. They understand that obvious control creates resistance. If someone tells you to abandon your friends, you become suspicious. If someone tells you to stop speaking to your family, alarm bells begin to ring. Direct control is easy to recognize. The dangerous kind is almost invisible. It begins with suggestions, small comments, harmless observations, tiny seeds planted so quietly that you never notice them taking root. Your friends don't really understand you. Your family always seems negative. Nobody supports you the way I do. I just don't want people taking advantage of you. Each sentence sounds reasonable on its own. Each sentence sounds protective, caring even. But manipulation rarely arrives wearing the face of control. It arrives wearing the face of concern. The Stoics understood something profound about human nature. No person sees reality perfectly. This is why Marcus Aurelius surrounded himself with teachers, philosophers, and advisors, despite being the most powerful man in the known world. He understood that wisdom requires perspective. Every human being has blind spots. The people around us help reveal them. A dangerous person understands this too, which is exactly why they try to remove those people. Not all at once. One relationship at a time, one conversation at a time, one doubt at a time. Because the moment multiple perspectives disappear, their version of reality becomes the only version left. And that is where real control begins. Notice how isolation rarely feels like isolation in the beginning. It feels like intimacy. You start spending more time with them, sharing more with them, depending on them. They become the first person you call when something happens, the first person whose opinion matters, the first person you seek for reassurance. At first, this feels like connection. Then gradually, something changes. You stop mentioning certain things to friends. You stop opening up to family. You stop seeking outside opinions. Not because anyone forced you to stop, because somewhere along the way you learned that doing so creates tension, disapproval, conflict. So you unconsciously begin shrinking your world to keep the peace. This is how control often works, not through commands, through conditioning. Epictetus warned that the people closest to us shape our perception of reality more than we realize. Spend enough time around someone who constantly distorts truth, and eventually distortion starts feeling normal. Spend enough time around someone who constantly questions your instincts, and eventually you begin questioning them too. Human beings adapt to their environment. The problem is that we also adapt to unhealthy environments. And by the time we notice what once felt wrong has started feeling familiar, that familiarity becomes dangerous, because familiarity is often mistaken for safety. One of the clearest signs of a controlling person appears when another voice enters the conversation. Watch what happens when a trusted friend gives you advice. Watch what happens when a family member expresses concern. Watch what happens when someone challenges the narrative they have carefully built. Do they welcome the perspective, or do they immediately attack the source? Suddenly your friend is jealous, your family is toxic, your mentor is controlling. Anyone who threatens their influence somehow becomes